to Licensing Subcommittee. Can I just start off with the meeting protocol before we go to the agenda? You should have had it in an email before. So it's only speak when invited to by the chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Will everyone please ensure their mics are muted when they are not speaking apart from the chair? If you have any technical difficulties, please use the chat function. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Applicants and all parties will be asked to leave the proceedings after their item has been concluded. Once all applications have been considered, can you please log out of the hearing? Each party will be notified of the decision within 5 working days. If I can just hand over to can I just start with the first item on the agenda? Can we elect a chair, please?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Cloutier, please.
Thank you, Polly. Thank you, Brian. Okay, I think the first thing I need to do is to find out who's here. The hearing will be held by myself as chair, Councillor Emma Cloutier from London Fields Ward, and my colleague, who will introduce himself now.
Councillor Brian Bell, Brownswood.
Thank you. And I think from the council we have Rabia, who's the Government Services. We have Amanda North, who is the licensing lawyer. We have Suba, who's the licensing officer, senior licensing officer. We have Mario, who is the IT person who stays in the background. Hopefully we won't need, but if we do, use the chat to contact him. Okay, then we have the objector. Can I just get you to introduce yourself, please? No. Yes, can you indicate, unmute yourself just to say hello and who you are, and that would be great, just so we all know. And we can hear. Hello? No. Oh God. Is that mine or his? Frozen. It's him. Okay. Well, let's go over to the applicant then. And if you can just indicate who's speaking and who we've got here. If somebody wants to take the lead on that, I'd be grateful, because we've got quite a lot of people and I don't know who they all are.
Good afternoon, Councillor. I'm Gary Grant. I'm the barrister acting for the applicant, McDonald's. My team is Preetam Seepool, who is the franchisee supervisor, effectively the operations director covering this branch. Could he please identify himself by raising a hand? Thank you. Secondly, I have Mr. Amir Atefi, who's a director of the franchisee, who's the actual applicant, A&L Restaurants Limited. I have Mr. Joshua Simons, who's my instructing consultant. Could you raise your hands, please, Joshua? I have Mr. Jeff Cooper, crime and disorder consultant, who's prepared the report within your bundle. Jeff, can you raise your hand, please?
Thank you.
And Joshua, I'm going to ask whether the acoustician, Jim Smith, has been able to make the hearing or not. You're on mute, Joshua.
It's all right. I can see Jim.
Jim Smith has just joined. Yes, he just joined. He says.
So the acoustic.
I don't know if I'm on mute or not, but if you can hear me, I'm present.
Thank you. Okay.
So that's everyone for the applicant.
Lovely. And just hello again to the objector. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
And your name is?
It's Matthew.
Matthew, lovely. Thank you very much, Matthew. Okay, so if everybody mutes themselves, that's great. I think we've heard if everybody puts themselves now onto mute while we go through a few things. The first thing, we have no apologies as far as I'm aware. Any declarations of interest from my colleague Brian Bell? No, I just not sure whether he's present.
I think he's frozen.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will just.
Should we wait a few minutes for him? Because we.
Will I go through the? He knows the hearing procedure,
Yeah.
so I could go through the hearing procedure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if everybody has the hearing procedure in the papers they've got. I will just run through it so that you're aware of what's happening. So the step one is we've appointed the chair and introduced ourselves. Step two, the licensing officer, Suba, will introduce the only case we're hearing today, which is the McDonald's extension. Then it will be for the applicant, in this case McDonald's, to make their case. We have no responsible authorities cases, so we'll then, after McDonald's have made their case, go over to you, Matthew, and you'll have the opportunity as the other people to make your case. Okay, after that, we can have a discussion through the chair, which would likely be people responding to each other, perhaps, and asking questions from the councillors. Will ask questions to lead that. As I say, the discussion is through me, not to each other directly, before we then have any opportunity for closing remarks, if there's anything people just want to finish off with. But at that stage, you cannot bring in any new information. And after that, we'll finish the meeting to allow the committee to consider and make their decision. I hope that's clear. I hope everybody understands that. And I hope we've got Councillor Bell back. But at the moment, we don't. So we'll have to wait for him because I'm afraid, down to 2 councillors sitting on this committee, so we don't need Councillor Bell.
Do you want to try to ring him at all? Sorry, sorry, Rabia. Do you want to try to ring him, Councillor Bell, just to check to see that he's okay?
I do apologise to everybody. We are slightly hobbled by Councillor Bell's internet wasn't good in the pre-meet. Sorry about that. And I have drilling next door, as you may be able to hear every now and then, odd noises, which I can do nothing about. I apologise. Oh, he's back. Hello, Brian.
Hi, I'm sorry about this, but I've got a particularly bad internet connection today. I'm afraid
That's
it's
all right.
likely to drop out again.
I've explained.
Only ask for your
Yeah.
patience and apologise.
I've explained, and we've gone through the hearing procedure. So now that you're back, we'll just carry on as much as we can when you're here. When you drop out, I hope everybody understands. We'll just have to wait. I'll just call the meeting to a halt while we wait for you to rejoin. So if everybody's happy with that, sorry, it's not. I will now ask the licensing officer, please, to run through the application from McDonald's.
Thank you, Chair. Licensing Service received an application for variation of premises license under Section 34 of the Licensing Act 2003 for 241 City Road to extend late night refreshment as stated in the agenda. Police withdrawn their objection based on agreed conditions as stated in the report on 8.1. Only one other person representation remains. The other person have submitted some additional information and video evidence, and the applicant have submitted further additional information. So all those documents have been circulated. I have nothing else to add. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any clarification? No? Okay, lovely. Okay, then we go over now to the applicant, please, to make your case.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I be heard?
Yes.
Councillor, I've set out a summary of our submissions in the summary of applicants' written submissions dated the 30th of November. I'd just like to confirm, please, that you and Councillor Bell have had a chance to consider those.
Yes.
And I have followed that up because following service of that, there were then a number of emails from the sole residential objector, Matthew, including various videos that have come in over the last 48 hours or so. So in response to that, this morning I've served a note on the law of public nuisance. And the first point you can either take as a preliminary point or take it into consideration as part of your overall consideration today, is that there are no relevant representations before you. The reason I make that submission is as follows. Under section 18.3 of the Licensing Act, and I've set this out in my legal note this morning, you are only entitled, as you know, as an experienced committee, to take into account relevant representations. And a relevant representation, I've seen Councillor Bell's screen has frozen. I'm worried he's dropped off.
He's left the meeting. Sorry, you're right. We'll have to pause there. Very hopeful we can be back in the town hall as soon as we can in the spring. This is too difficult.
Councillor Cloutier, do you think Councillor Bell might want to phone in as well at the same time, you know, on his phone, just so that he can hear everything, even if he drops out?
We did try and do that. Is
okay.
Somebody able to phone him and suggest that again? It would.
Rabia, would you be able to? I know you asked already, but it's just might help.
I'm manually.
Councillor, I wonder while we're waiting, if just out of interest, is there a target date to get everyone back into the real world of the town hall?
No, not that I'm aware of. Obviously, we're waiting at the moment. No, I haven't been given a date. I have to say that apart from this one, licensing hearings online have been exceptionally smooth and really not a problem. But we are obviously going to, yeah, okay. Brian, are you back with us? Okay. Brian, there is a suggestion that you should dial in on your phone as well, that your phone would be a more consistent presence. I don't know if you want to have a couple of minutes to speak to Mario about that.
See documents at least the size of a laptop screen.
But
and when the connection goes down.
But you could look at the documents on your laptop screen.
But not.
And at the same time, your phone to be in the meeting.
No, if the connection to Google Drive goes down, then documents are not accessible.
Not when they're on your computer. Okay.
I'm really sorry, everyone.
I think if you drop out again, we will need you to speak to Mario about the best way to handle this. Okay, so I would ask you if you and Mario to have a conversation if you have to leave the meeting again, which I think you may have just done. Yeah.
Can I not suggest that
Mario, would you like to give him a ring?
Why doesn't Mario call him to explain the calling in?
Yeah, Mario, could you contact Brian Bell, please, and explain how to, because he's under the impression that he would use the Google documents if the internet goes down, which shouldn't be the case, and the phone link may. Right. Somebody needs to email Mario.
I thought I was being helpful.
Yeah. Mario wants Brian's number. If Rabia, if you could quickly email that.
Email that to him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll try and get the number.
Yeah. Sorry, everybody. This is hideous. I do apologise.
I don't know. I'm in the depths of South London and it's raining terribly. I wonder if you've got a similar storm in North London.
Yeah, it's grey and rainy. It's not actually, it doesn't look to me here like a storm, but I think it's just been a bad internet day, and sometimes that happens. As I say, if we had 3 councillors on, we'd simply carry on with 2 of us. But we're strapped at the moment for councillors as well. So if this doesn't sort itself fairly soon, obviously we may have to adjourn the meeting, because we can't go on having interruptions every half a minute. It's not going to work.
Has there been an attempt for Councillor Bell to actually use the dial-in number just from his landline?
That's what we're trying to fix up now. I think he's uncertain about what effect that would have. Here we go. Okay, Brian, what's the situation? Have you managed to talk to Mario?
No, how am I supposed to reach him?
Well, I did want you to speak to Mario to try and arrange if you can dial in, because with you leaving every minute or so, it's not going to work. So the only alternative would be if you dial in on the phone. But if you need Mario to just check that that's possible and that you won't lose your sight of the documents when that's happening. So he's put in the chat the number. I'm so sorry. I think I probably should have adjourned this meeting for 5 or 10 minutes. Amanda? Should I formally adjourn the meeting? You're on mute.
Yes, sorry, I do apologise. Yes, you can formally adjourn it if you feel it's necessary, but if Councillor Bell is ready to proceed.
I hope so.
Good. Okay, well, I think people are drifting back now. Trying to look there, we've had 5 minutes. We've just about nearly had 5 minutes. If everybody's back, are we missing anybody?
Mr. Grant, are all your clients here?
Yes, we are.
Just checking. Yes. Yes, they're there.
Okay, brilliant. Lovely. Okay, then apologies for the delay. And Mr. Grant, if I can ask you then to carry on.
Thank you. I'm not entirely sure at what point Councillor Bell dropped off. So what I'll do is just make the first point again. So the first point is this, that, and this is something you can either deal with as a preliminary point or as part of the whole hearing. It's entirely within your hands. So the first point is that simply as a matter of law, there's no relevant representation before you. And the reason I say that is that there is a sole residential objector, Matthew, and the complaints appear to be, taken at its highest, that there is the potential for a private nuisance to be caused to him and his individual household. Licensing is not the forum to resolve private nuisance issues. It only deals, as you know, with the poor licensing objectives, and the relevant one here is a public nuisance. Now, as the word public nuisance suggests, it must impact on the public at large rather than an individual household. And I've set out the great deal of judicial learning on that in my note this morning, and I don't need to repeat any of that. Now, none of the legal point I've just made is not to dismiss the concerns of Matthew. Forgive me, I don't know his surname, so I'm going to have to use his forename if he doesn't mind. But those concerns have to be weighed into the balance with the overriding interests of the rest of the community and the users of McDonald's. Now, to put it into context, each year there are some 700,000 individual customers of this branch of McDonald's. And it's not McDonald's, the big company, it's a franchise holder. 210,000 people currently use the drive-through, which, as you know, has an existing premises license entitling it to operate until 2 a.m. So effectively, what we're asking through this application is to be able to use it for 3 hours longer, through to 5 a.m. And the reason we want to do that is simple. We want to serve the customers who wish to use our restaurant. And in particular, those customers who don't work 9-to-5 jobs, but as is increasingly common in London, those people who work night shifts, and in particular, emergency workers who use McDonald's in a disproportionate number. So that includes local NHS staff. It includes police who are often come at night to our venue. It includes ambulance workers and every other key shift worker who aren't in the emergency services. And we would like to be able to provide them, many of whom are from the local Hackney community, with the food and drink service they want. And that's the purpose of this application. Now, the reason I say that despite us asserting that there is in fact no relevant representation because there's no public nuisance, the suggestions of Matthew is he's experiencing a private nuisance. But the reason I say we don't dismiss that is because were you minded to grant this application, it will come along with a whole suite of extremely robust conditions. There are 40 in total, and at least 12 of those conditions directly impact on the outside area and controlling the sort of issues that Matthew has experienced. Now, can I just take you briefly to what those conditions are? And the reason I say that they are to some extent dependent on your decision is because it will cost a lot of money to implement these additional measures to control the outside, by which I mean car park and drive-through in particular. And that has to be paid for. And that is paid for by the extra revenue they would get by the additional hours they're asking by way of this new application, which, if granted, will of course simply replace the existing license. So if I could ask you please to turn to the schedule of conditions in the schedule of conditions, you'll find in your papers from pages 29 right through to 35. And could I ask you please to bring those up on your computer as I go through them? And Councillor Pluvier, I'll wait for your nod to indicate you've brought that page up. So it's 29 of the agenda papers.
My papers are unnumbered, so is this paragraph 8.1 of the report?
No, not those. I did actually email through a paginated version because I understood there were some IT difficulties. But if you're looking at them on screen, if you look at the page numbers at the top, I imagine, you'll be able to see them. Forgive me, I'm a dinosaur, I've printed them out. But it should still read page 29 of the digital bundle. So those conditions, and what I'm going to do, those are made up of a series of conditions which were both offered in the application itself, as well as those discussed and agreed with all the responsible authorities, and indeed an individual resident who lives in Shipperdes Walk had concerns, but engaged with McDonald's, and because of all the conditions we agreed to put in to look after the residents, they withdrew their representation. So the relevant conditions, which we say are directly relevant to the concerns expressed by Matthew, are, and I'll read out the numbering, it's conditions number 10. That includes increased staffing of the drive-through, which of course will mean the cars who are queuing up will go through even quicker, and therefore minimizing the risk of someone honking their horn because they're getting frustrated in a queue. 11 has a click and collect condition, so people can order while they're in their car and then immediately collect it. So all these are going to be introduced and they're going to speed up the drive-through. Condition 17 imposes a duty on the shift manager or senior member of staff to conduct regular checks of the drive-through and external areas. Condition 26 is the introduction of an automatic number plate recognition camera system, ANPR. And the importance of that is this, that as cars come in, their number plates are caught. If you have the sort of idiot, plate will be captured and they will be given what's known as a banning order. And that will be in writing because we have access to DVLA who can provide the details, the registered keeper, and they will be sent a banning order if they behave in this sort of antisocial way by honking their horns late at night. What that then means is that car's number plate is in McDonald's system, and if they turn up again, two things will happen. One, they won't be served. Two, they will be issued with a £60 private parking fine because this is private property and they would be trespassing without our permission. And just as if, for example, we drive off to a supermarket and we park without buying a ticket, we can get a £60 fine that we have to pay. The same will happen now. So we intend to introduce that system. So the odd individual who behaves in an antisocial way in their car will be deterred from doing so, and they won't be permitted to come back. But that's an expensive system that, of course, has to be paid for. Condition 27 is to turn off the Wi-Fi of customers from midnight. And the reason for that is it stops people idling. Nowadays, if people can't use their internet on Wi-Fi, it is a less attractive option for them to hang around in their cars in the car park. Over the page, condition 29, that once again includes, it's a slightly reworded version of the increased staffing condition in the drive-through. Same with 30. 31 is an important condition. 31 is an agreement by my clients to stop traffic leaving the drive-through or car park. It says at the moment after midnight through the Thoresby Street entrance. Now, Thoresby Street is the street that Matthew lives on. That's where you've seen the videos taken from. And there are two exits. There's Thoresby Street, which is the usual exit, which is the one next to Mr. Matthew's window. And then there is another exit that goes onto the very busy City Road. Now, we've originally proposed midnight, when cones or a barrier will be put up to prevent people leaving there and then driving out right past Matthew's window. What we're prepared to do in response to Matthew's concerns, although we accept these probably won't satisfy him, is to ban the exit of vehicles on the Thoresby Street exit from 10 p.m. So from 10 p.m. there will be no vehicles departing through the Thoresby Street exit if you are minded to grant this application. Condition 32 deals with notices to drivers. Recognise this is a residential area. Don't honk your horn at night or indeed during the day. Condition 33 is an agreement to turn off what's called the nighttime sound mode. And that is that when you're speaking to a drive-through customer through the microphone, it is put into a muted form, so it doesn't create noise for nearby residents. 34 is an important condition, and this is perhaps, together with the ANPR system, the most expensive condition to introduce. And that is to introduce a car park marshal, and indeed it's repeated in a different way in condition 35, from 11 p.m. through to by late night refreshment, which is the only activity we apply for, is to patrol and manage the car park and drive-through. So there will be, in addition to all the staff, there will be a dedicated car park marshal. So if anyone is tempted to honk their horn, they will be immediately pounced on by someone who's on the scene. 36 deals with additional litter patrols. That's been a cause of concern to Matthew. And 40 is a condition that we have quarterly residential meetings for as long as residents want them. And we asked for that because when this application was put in, a number of residents fully engaged with McDonald's, and indeed it led, in the example of the Shepherdess Walk resident, for her to withdraw her objections because we adopted what she wanted and we put them forward as conditions that are the ones before you now. Now, Matthew has taken, as is his right, a different approach, and in the words of his recent email, he refuses to engage as a positive step. We're sorry about that, but he has to make his own decisions. Now, there is, as you may guess, some background to the relationship between Matthew and McDonald's, which has gone on for a number of years. And the background appears to be that Matthew is very disgruntled at having a McDonald's opposite his house. And he's expressed it at some length in his written communications. McDonald's have tried to engage. I will give you simply, Matthew, you'll have a chance to speak in a moment. What they have done, I will simply give some examples. That within the last few years, the light that goes on, the signage light for McDonald's, was causing a concern to Matthew. So we agreed to turn off the light for Matthew's benefit at a certain time. On one occasion, the electrician was there to carry out health and safety checks on all the electrics. And so the light went on for a moment. Matthew remonstrated with the staff when that happened. There was a pedestrian gate on the Thoresbury Street side entrance, which people were using as a cut-through to get into McDonald's, that was causing Matthew some concern. We agreed to close off that pedestrian access for the benefit of Matthew. But once again, it wasn't enough. We've offered all the conditions that have satisfied other residents, but regrettably, it wasn't enough for Matthew. So we're in a position where Matthew is disgruntled. There is essentially a private neighbours dispute between them. We have put forward appropriate, proportionate and robust conditions. We have no hope that Matthew will accept them, but it's not for lack of trying. And of course, you need to put into the balance, firstly, the sort of numbers of cars that go through. Over 200,000 a year go through the drive-through. The relatively minimal number of complaints, 5 complaints on the council system over 5 years. That's an extraordinarily good record for this sort of venue. You'll have to put in the fact that the hundreds and hundreds of residents who live in the vicinity did not object to this application, because a lot of them are users of this restaurant and recognise the benefits of it. And you'll have to put all of that in the balance against the single residential objection of Matthew. Now, the evidence in this case comes from 2 sides. It comes firstly from the council's side, and I'll summarise it thus. Every single one of the council's experts on crime and disorder, on public safety, on public nuisance, on protecting kids from harm, do not object to the grant of this licence, and it has undergone a lot of scrutiny. All of them are satisfied that with the additional conditions proposed, the grant of this application will not undermine the licensing objectives. The resident agreed in Shepherdess Walk and withdrew their objection. In addition, those views of the council's own experts are supported by independent experts instructed by my client. And they include Jeff Cooper, who's a distinguished former licensing sergeant who used to operate both in the Met Police and outside for, I think, over 30 years, who's prepared a report. It's not a whitewash report. It says, look, I went in June and I actually saw an issue. There was someone loitering, but the staff moved him on. And there were some improvements that could be done. And McDonald's did them. And when he went back, he was satisfied they properly responded, and concludes it will not adversely impact on the crime and disorder objective if this application were granted. Similarly, with public nuisance and sound, there have been 3 extensive sound survey and reports conducted by Sustainable Acoustics through Jim Smith, who's here. They've looked into everything. They've looked into the noise from people visiting. They've looked into the noise of cars. They've looked at the surrounding soundscape, bearing in mind this is a very busy area on the city road. And they similarly conclude that the impact of this application, if granted, is not one that is going to, on a technical sound basis, impact on the licensing objectives. You will also know that planning, Hackney, acting as a planning authority, has granted planning permission for 24 hours for a year-long trial period. Now, planning and licensing, as you know, are different regimes. One does not bind the other. But there is High Court rulings to indicate that where the planning authority has made a decision in a similar context, then it's right for licensing to have regard to that, and vice versa. The case of Forster, which Ms. Noth is aware of and is referred to in my written submissions. And they, of course, looked into residential amenity to some extent as part of that planning application process. You will also know that we are not introducing for the first time a 24/7 license in the area. There is already one in existence within a stone's throw. If you know this area, it's essentially one precinct. On that precinct,
can I ask you you've had quite a really long time, Mr. Grant.
Certainly. So
you could whiz through, because we have read all of this.
So the point is, there is already a 24/7 license next door.
Yeah.
It's a co-op food store in this case. You've seen the evidence of the operator and what they're doing and the measures. They are responsive. And there is also a track record by way of the temporary event notices. 10 weekends over April and to July last year. Matthew appears to have been wholly unaware they even took place. That is positive evidence that we're not going to cause a problem. So for all those reasons, we would say the grant of this license would not undermine the licensing objectives, and we ask for its grant.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Bell, do you have any points for clarification from this? I must say, I don't.
No, not at this stage. I think we have to go on to the other parties.
Okay, thank you. Okay, in that case, we'll go over to you, Matthew, for your...
Thank you. Am I ready? Can I go?
Yes.
Well, I'd like to point out firstly that the last time we had this licensing meeting, it was pointed out about how McDonald's was breaking its license by going past the 2 p.m. Curfew, and they were serving beyond that. So McDonald's is not holier than thou. McDonald's does not operate within its license. I believe Thursby Street as a start was meant to be closed off at 11 p.m. Traffic is flowing through since then all night long. We deal with forms of public nuisance from smells, from the cooking fat. We deal with customers using the alleyway next to the blocks as a toilet. We deal with cars hooting all night long. I've been woken up by 5 in the morning by cars that have been in McDonald's hooting. There is rubbish on all nearby streets. There is public nuisance from drug dealing. It is a known location for drug dealing. Everybody around here knows if you want to come and get some drugs, you come to the McDonald's. And don't give me that about that Wi-Fi, because that Wi-Fi might be turned off, but nowadays everyone's got 4G. It's also, there are groups that leave McDonald's who hang around and intimidate people by my block. There is general noise from people leaving. McDonald's is in a residential area. 3 different sides of McDonald's is residents. The main reason most of the residents do not put in objections is because they either don't know about these applications or they feel completely let down by the council. Most of them on the Islington side don't know about the application. The ones on my side are apathetic. They're on a WhatsApp group complaining about the noise and the problems. And also with public safety, I was nearly knocked over by the Thursby entrance. The alleyways are being used as a toilet. I'm council, so I'm on a low income. I have a low wage and I can't move. I'm trapped here. I have tried to swap my council flat. I have tried to move. I had a lady came over in February, look at my flat, loved it. Wanted to take my flat, but she wanted to do some late night checks in the area. She came back, she found drug dealing, she found horns honking at McDonald's, she found antisocial behaviour. She found litter on the streets. She said to me she did not feel safe. She did not feel safe living in my flat. I walk past drug dealers all the time of the day leaving from McDonald's. I don't feel safe in my flat. I feel trapped. I feel as if I'm in a prison. I can't move. Also, Hoxton has the highest amount of crime and disorder coming from and by this McDonald's. It attracts homeless people. It attracts gangs that then come and hang around the front of the blocks, even getting into the blocks, doing their drug deals. All of the neighbours voiced concerns, but they're apathetic. You could see it from my ASB forms. I'd started filling them in, but the problem is I would spend all day and night ticking there's a car horn, saying that there was someone outside vomiting, saying that there was someone outside banging on the front door to come in and do their drugs. At the end of the day, I'm trapped here. I can't move. And when you all go to bed at night and you all have a lovely night's sleep, wonderful for you, because it's me that's woken up by McDonald's alarm. It's me that's woken up by cars hooting. And McDonald's goes on about all these things, lovely things that they're going to bring in to stop antisocial behaviour and how they consider the public and not a nuisance. Yesterday, throughout the day, they were ripping up the streets of the drive-through. Did they let any of the residents of any of the nearby blocks know that they were going to be doing works? Did they politely send a letter or notification that they were going to be doing drilling and hammering and cutting and sawing of concrete? No, they don't care about residents. They care about one thing, and that is selling burgers. Also, this is a residential area. You're turning it into a location in its own right. The petrol station is different. People go to the petrol station to get petrol. The McDonald's is turning into a destination, and McDonald's use those figures of how many people will use the drive-through once this comes in place. But the thing is, they didn't actually list that McDonald's will then promote it on every billboard as 24 hours nearby. And as I would also remind you, McDonald's was last time rejected its application because it was breaking its license. McDonald's is not to be trusted. McDonald's forms a public nuisance, not just to me, but to my neighbours and everybody else living by. There is crime and disorder. There is, we're plagued by antisocial behaviour here. And I don't want to engage in McDonald's because I don't want a 24-hour McDonald's. It is bad enough being in this cell as it is without having it 24 hours. And I don't see how this goes along with Hackney's low emission zones. As soon as you have that street, that drive-through outside, and there are cars going through 24 hours, that is essentially a main road beside us. Let me see if I've covered everything. Also, I would like to say it was absolutely wonderful when McDonald's was closed over the first lockdown. I had good night's sleep. I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to put in any objections. But as soon as McDonald's started to open up, they had a barbecue for their staff late in the evening, not considering any neighbours yet again. Also, I suffered with anxiety at the fact that McDonald's was going to reopen. I suffered with anxiety that I wouldn't be able to sleep, or I would be woken up by the noise, the pollution, and the other problems. There is no one to help. I'm trapped here. It's like a cell. I show people my flat. They're like, it's a very lovely flat. But we wouldn't want to live next to McDonald's. And McDonald's says how wonderful it is. It's bringing in all these new measures. I ask, why aren't they bringing in them now? They're not bringing them in now because they know that they will cost them money. McDonald's doesn't care about residents. The only thing McDonald's cares about is itself. And with regards to that lighting display, which did turn on, I would just like to say that it wasn't me that went and complained about it. It was one of my neighbours. So that just shows this lie that it's all from me and other people don't care. It was one of my neighbours that went and asked for the light to be turned off. But that's just another problem we have with McDonald's. They don't care about residents. They don't care about their neighbours. They are just there to sell burgers. And that is what they want to do. They want to screw that location out of more profit.
Okay, thank you.
And another thing I would say quickly, can I just add one more point?
Yeah.
As much as McDonald's promise to stop car horns, they have no control over people hooting their horns. People will hoot their horns if they want to. And my sleep and other people's sleep will be disturbed. McDonald's cannot, you know. And another point, this was a residential area. It was a residential area before McDonald's came here. I think I'm finished, to be honest.
That's lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll go. That's all right. No, it's fair enough.
Sorry for my little
Do we
rant
have any
there.
clarification on points raised, Councillor Bell?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go into the discussion phase and questions to each side. I would like to ask you, Matthew, you sent in some videos of hooting. Can you, they obviously one of them was when it was dark and the others were during the daytime. Is that right? And was that over a period of time, or is that, you know, I'm sure it says on it, but
the hooting at the nighttime one was last November. The hooting in the light was I can't remember what dates I submitted, but the dates were submitted. I would say if I wanted to be, I could be at my window 24/7 taking these videos. I'm as apathetic as the neighbours.
It's okay. Yeah, thank you. Can I just take that point over to McDonald's and ask you, given that there is this problem already, why it hasn't been dealt with?
I'm going to ask, I think he's listed as Kelsey, but
it's pre-time. We have system in place already. These are happening where the shift manager speak to them, and also at night we have traffic marshal.
No, Kelsey, you're having
sometimes if it's
Stop. We've got feedback. Do you have someone else on a computer with you on that room?
Yes.
Can you ask them to turn off their microphone and speaker, please?
Yeah, they have.
All right. Let's see if you can do it.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, there's terrible feedback, but see how you do.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Yes, that's better. Okay, so
Councillor, I'm sorry, I've just seen Matthew has dropped out of the hearing. I don't know if that was deliberate or accidental.
He's back. I can see him, I think. He's back. Are you back, Matthew? Yes, he is.
Thank you.
I'm not sure he can hear us, but I think he can. Can you hear us, Matthew? Put a thumbs up if you can. No. Okay, we've got problems there too.
Should we wait a few minutes for him to come back?
Yes, I think we need.
Um,
Oh, here he is. Matthew, are you back on the call? No, he's not. He's frozen again. Right. Okay. Matthew, you're muted, so I need you to unmute to let me know if you're back on the call. Or just put your thumb up if you can hear enough for us to go on. We've stopped the proceedings because you disappeared. No, still. Okay, that's not working. Right. I seem to have lost half of everybody now. We have a lot of people on the call, Mr. Grant. If there's any way of you reducing any of those, I do understand that you may want to call them, but it makes it harder the more people there are on. It's also harder for me to monitor. You've all disappeared now. Is it possible, Mr. Grant, that you could rationalise at all the number of people?
I can't.
Well, the only, I mean, there's the two experts, Jeff Cooper and the sound expert, Jim Smith. The only question is, would you have any questions for them?
I don't have any questions for the sound expert or Jeff Cooper.
I've read both the reports. Again, I don't have any questions.
Okay, so they could drop out. Okay, so they could drop out.
Maybe if I could ask them perhaps to drop out. But thanks for attending. So Jim Smith and Jeff Cooper.
Thank you very much. I'm available if you need me this afternoon. I'll try. Thank you.
Thank you.
Matthew, are you back on the call? Okay, can you hear the hearing procedure?
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. I can hear you now. Yes, I can hear you, and you can hear us.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, I can hear you. For some reason, the web page was closed.
Okay,
Hello?
well, if you're back on the, so are you back in the hearing now? You can hear enough for us to carry on.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I was asking why we have to wait. I mean, you know, given the queuing for the window, which is from the videos fairly clearly adjacent to a block of residential flats, why it's only possible to stop that now between the hours of 2 and 5, when it hasn't been previously possible to stop it during, for example, the hours between 11 and 2.
This is Pritam. We've always had system in place to deal with the honking of noise where the shift manager would always speak to them, and we'd also have the banning letters, as Mr. Grant has mentioned. We take the number plate, everything, and that's always been happening. This incident that...
Well, how is it, why is that, sorry, excuse me for interrupting, but we've been told that that hasn't been the case and that it now will be better. So we've been told that those measures haven't been in place, but they now will be in place if we extend the license. So you're telling me that's not the case?
No, that is the case. I mean, going back to the amount of cars that we are serving over the period of a year, and the amount of incidents we've had, and going back to the incident since last November, it's very, very minimal. So we do have a system. It has been happening. We have new offenders going to a drive-through. We don't have the repeat offenders because they're always been told and they're always been spoken to by the shift managers and by the managers and all the operation managers and all the system that we have already. Yes, sometimes we do have new offenders coming in, and they are dealt with at all times. It's part and parcel of the job of the shift manager to do so.
I think it's the, forgive me, I think it's the car park marshal is the major, the drive-through marshal. That's the primary thing to be introduced, and indeed the Thoresby Street blockage from 10 p.m. is what we're offering. But
okay,
client indicates you've got to look 210,000 people. You have to have some people occasionally honk. That doesn't mean that's the situation every night.
It's just that the thought, it doesn't, I'm not, the entrance or exit doesn't seem to be the point. It's from the video, it seems that the queue for the window is directly opposite, is between the McDonald's building and this block of residential flats. So there's a narrow street, which is Thoresby Street, there's a parked car, and then there's the McDonald's queue. It's very clear from the video that if one person hoots and another one shouts, it's very loud. So I just wondered, I mean, that is the case. Obviously, for the traffic not to exit, I don't see from that where it exits onto Thoresby Road, because it's going past Thoresby Road inside. So it doesn't seem to me materially different. So the evidence you just gave said that the manager currently takes numbers and deals with people who hoot. I'm surprised at that, because that would be an enormous number of people. And you'd have to go out to take their number. So I just, you know, we weren't. So now we're being told that that number would be read by a system. Okay. It doesn't, you know, when I asked why it doesn't happen already, it doesn't seem to happen already. I mean, certainly on that video, nobody's coming out saying don't shout. You know, I just wondered why there weren't marshals between 11 and 2 o'clock already, given that this is, you know, this is the queue of traffic idling quite near where people live. That was the question I asked.
Well, I think the answer is there is staff, but there isn't a dedicated marshal. Costs a lot of money.
But the staff are indoors, aren't they? I mean, they can't see a number plate.
I mean, Preetam, you'll tell me what happens.
They can speak to the drivers via the windows. We have the 2 windows where they can speak to them via the windows.
Okay.
Occasionally, if it just goes out, and that's when they would come out and speak to them at the time. And going back to the point, we do not have a dedicated.
Okay, the point I'm making is that it has been acknowledged by McDonald's that there is an issue with residential properties nearby, and it's acknowledged in the fact that you have already and in the past, you know, had to, you know, made issue about closing the traffic access there. So I'm just surprised that none of these measures have happened already between 11 and 2, given that those are hours that a lot of people sleep. And it's going through. I mean, you're the ones that this is a huge number of people going through. 200,000 a year is you know, is a lot of people. I don't know. You haven't put it down in terms of hours.
Can I just say, forgive me. There seems some feedback. Amir, can you put your microphone, please? Thank you. The overwhelming number of people go through the venue during the daytime. We're not talking about that sort of numbers going through between 2 and 5. We are talking about some people. No, Amir, turn off your microphone, please. Thank you. We're not talking about the same sort of numbers going through between 2 and 5, but we do want to cater for those people who do wish to go through there. But it's not going to be the chains of people. And yes, we do take steps even before this application. But what we're going to do is to heavily beef up those steps essentially with the extra income that the extra hours will bring in. Now, to say, can we promise no one will ever honk their horn? No, of course we can't. but no premises would ever get a license if they had to meet the standard of perfection. But we're saying that it doesn't outweigh the advantages to the hundreds of thousands of people who do want to use it, that you might get an occasional honk, although we're going to do our very best to minimise that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bell, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Like you, I'm somewhat sceptical about some of the McDonald's proposing, such as a private company issuing banning orders and then trying to enforce them. I'm not entirely sure that would work. However, they've also made some impressive offers, such as closing off the street, so the exit into the street at a certain time of night. So it's a question on balance. Do the extra things they've offered, if they're consistently applied, outweigh the disadvantages?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I think I'm wondering now, I think we've had an enormous amount of information from both the resident and from McDonald's. I'm not sure that there's much more. I'm not sure if either party has any direct questions or questions through me to the other party. I think probably not. I mean, Matthew, you've made it clear that the conditions, that you understand the extra conditions. Oh gosh, is that me or everyone's gone off again?
We're here, Councillor Fluvio. We can hear you.
You can hear
I can hear you.
Right. Yeah. Okay, good, great. Okay, so Matthew, you understand the conditions and you're still not happy. You would rather this wasn't extended, even with
the conditions do not deal with the crime.
Yeah, I understand.
The public nuisance or the public safety.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Just checking that. Amanda.
Just one question, just in case. I don't know if Matthew's mentioned this, but have any of his neighbours also share his experience? And did they make any? You know, I assume that they haven't made any representations, but are they experiencing the same things that he is? Just out of curiosity.
Loads of my neighbours experience these problems, but as I said, they're worn down and apathetic. I'm worn down and apathetic. I should have filled in those antisocial behaviour sheets up to the hilt. We have a group WhatsApp chat, and I've seen over 127 incidents on there of people having problems with McDonald's, but people are apathetic. They struggle with the laborious task of going through the antisocial behaviour only for McDonald's to get away with it.
Okay, well, just while we're dealing with this, I think if a group of residents have a WhatsApp group that is largely a complaint like this, I would absolutely recommend that they take some of that information to at least one of their local councillors as well. So
I did actually, and last time Councillor Williams organised a bigger group, but this time she won't reply to my emails even.
Okay, all right, okay, thank you for that.
It's David and Goliath.
Yeah, okay.
Councillor,
right.
just address that. As you know, there is no new information that isn't simply an amplification of an existing representation.
Yeah.
You start to have brand new evidence based on one resident about others. That's not something we've been notified of, disclosed to us, and it's not something we're able to look into.
No, the same goes for us, Mr. Grant. I mean, this is not a court of law, as you know. This is always people are given their chance to talk, and I entirely accept, and we will, we won't take the WhatsApp group to mean that there are 100 people. But at the same time, the question was asked. We know that this is a residential block and there are other residents there. And it's fair enough that we ask the question, why other people haven't objected, and it's fair enough for Matthew to give the answer that he's given, and you know, we will attach whatever weight is appropriate to that answer. So I hope that's okay. Thank you. Again, I think we're reaching the point now where there isn't new information to be shared, and we don't need to answer questions across. And Mr. Grant, do you have anything else you want to say, or would you be happy to move to summing up now?
No, summing up, please.
Okay. Would you like to go first then, please?
Certainly. You have a sole objector. You have nobody else objecting. Residents have an opportunity to object, the same as Matthew. Indeed, even people in Islington can see the notices in the same way as people the other side of the border. So you've got to look at the preponderance of evidence. And the preponderance of evidence on this from all your own experts, who you would wish to give very significant weight to, from the independent experts for the applicant, the preponderance of evidence is that with the additional measures that are in the conditions, that the additional hours will not undermine the licensing objectives. And you've got to weigh up the advantages to the multitude of people who will benefit from the 24/7 McDonald's against the issues that Matthew has, albeit we expect them to be mitigated by the additional conditions.
Okay, thank you. Just one thing I wanted to check with you. You said about the planning that they were separate but mirrored. Would you be content for us to mirror the 24-hour, sorry, not 24 hours, the 1 year? Planning, you have planning permission for 1 year, I believe. So we could do the same from licensing. Would that be, I mean, given that planning obviously have some, it's only for a year. And you did say that the two things run concurrently and that we should take note of what planning said, but not be bound by it. If we took note of it, we would take note of the fact that they've given you permission for a year.
You can have regard in a similar context, but unless the application is restricted to a year-long one, then recent decisions of a district judge have indicated that's not a lawful use of the Licensing Act.
Oh, we have. Well, I mean, it may in certain situations not be regarded as okay, but it's generally okay as a we will give a license on the temporary basis. But okay, so you're saying no to that?
Well, we'd like it permanently. I mean, if it's a choice between you'll give it to us for a year or you won't give it us at all, then obviously we'd prefer a year, but we would prefer it permanently.
Okay. Lovely.
On the basis that if there are subsequent problems, you've got the review system to deal with it.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Grant, I think that Councillor Pivet is just inquiring. I don't think she was just wanting to know whether you wanted it time limited or not. That's all. I don't think she's drawing any conclusions other than that.
The answer is no.
It's fine. Thank you. Matthew, do you wish to have a final, just summing up?
Certainly.
Yeah.
This application should not go through because it will be bad on public safety, it will be bad on public nuisance, and it will be bad on crime and disorder. It will be bad on all three of these things, and it is impossible for me to move away from the McDonald's. I just want you to remember, when you're in bed at night and there is cars hooting their horns and there is nothing you can do about it, and at the end of the day, McDonald's has never, ever stopped any of the customers that have been doing this or remonstrated any of them currently. I don't think they should be given a temporary license, and I don't think it is necessary for this extension of 3 hours just so that residents nearby, and this is a residential area, are sacrificed an extra 3 hours sleep.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. With that, we'll draw to a close and close the meeting, and everybody who's not on the panel to make the decision, I will ask you please to leave the meeting. Thank you very much for your time.
Councillor Pluvier, can I check, is the decision to be made today and announced, or will it be emailed out?
I think it will be emailed out. We won't come back. We don't come back to make the announcement. We do the decision making now in this meeting when everyone's left, but we then send that out within the next 5 days.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Sorry, just to say, Councillor Pluvier, through you, is that we can give an indication of the decision possibly by tomorrow, and the written decision to follow within the 5-day period, if that would be acceptable, Mr. Grant, because that's what we can do.
Certainly, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Amanda. That's helpful. Thanks. Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.